Welcome to our episode of Insurance Innovation Push Series. And today, again, we have another guest to talk about what we do within innovation in insurance industry. And today the topic is that can insurance process optimization benefit end users? And that's our headline for the day. Brief on Yellow May. So we're an insurance innovation consultancy agency and looking into innovation within the insurance industry. And that's why we also do this and have the casual discussions once a month with interesting guests there. So that is what we do. And then we welcome as well all the listeners to online, and then obviously for the ones who are joining in remotely as well. Will you, Chris, turn off the camera, then you can jump into the background.
Done.
Yeah, all right, excellent. So now over to you, Claire. So welcome, and you can share a few words of yourself for it. So go ahead.
Super, thank you. And hi everyone on the call, and to everybody that's listening to the recording. So my name's Clare Knight. I'm the CEO and founder of a company called the Delegated Authority Exchange, or DAX, as we've shortened it to. And we focus entirely on changing the operational landscape of the delegated insurance industry. So taking the industry from something that is today very disjointed, very duplicative, very paper-based, into a digital-first, hyper-connected world. So this is very topical for me today.
Yeah, very nice to have you here. I think it's definitely process in a way, in one format or another, is really there in regards to when you look at the insurance industry. I think that comes to almost everyone's mind, that this is in the background. So just to as a warm up there in regards to the discussion, Sarko, will you mute yourself from the background? Thanks.
Always.
And basically looking into a question that how do you see insurance process evolve over time in insurance industry?
Yeah, so hold on, let's see if we can quieten Zarko. There we go, thank you. So how sorry, can you repeat the question?
So how do you see insurance process evolve over time in insurance industry?
Yeah. First of all, I would say that as an industry, we have been underserved by technology that helps. And, you know, we have really been doing the best that we can with the tools that we have available to us. And those tools could be InsurTech tools or tools that have been leveraged to assist in the insurance space. But those tools also, frankly, are still too heavily focused in the Office suite. So in the Microsoft Office suite of Word, Excel, PowerPoint, PDF, email. We operationally underpin our companies using these tools, which inevitably results in a hellish amount of rekeying into other systems. And then these systems inevitably don't speak to each other, which means duplicative rekeying. And where we can, you know, insurers have tried to connect these systems and they've had to become their own integrator. And that's really hard. And it's not necessarily something that, you know, insurance companies are good at per se. And also where they have tried to do this, systems may not even speak to each other, or it may be very difficult for those systems to speak to each other because of their age or the way that they've been designed. Because historically, I would argue that tech companies haven't necessarily been that collaborative.
How do you see from that point of view? Obviously, because if you look at it from the customer experience you have from other industries as well, and looking at it kind of like people are quite used to jump into different stages of the process. They are kind of like coming either doing something in the beginning and then stopping and then kind of like, but still able to continue in the format that they like. What would you consider there, or what would be kind of one of the first touch points really that the insurance industry should grab from other industries, for example? What would be in your mind?
Yeah, so there's two things there, and I think you make a really good point, customer. I think you're making up a really excellent point, and it tends to be where I come from first. Is you should be looking at everything through a customer lens. Everything that you change, everything that you do, you need to start with the customer and then work back from there. What is the impact going to be on the customer? Now, I truly believe that insurance companies don't necessarily do this well enough, and I also think that we've just kind of been a bit slow in getting the basics right, perhaps, because if you get the basics right, then you can start to innovate. And we're doing the basics on paper still, broadly. And I know that we're using digital policy administration systems, and we're using digital claim systems and all that kind of stuff, but my focus as well is the delegated space. So for me, obviously, in the back end of that, before a policy is even sold to a customer, what happens in order for capacity to be distributed across the market is wildly burdensome in terms of administrative overhead. You know, we're looking at, in the delegated industry, we're looking at somewhere in the region of 40 to 60 cents in every euro is expense, it's OPEX. That's not brokerage, that's not commissions, that's not fees, that's OPEX in that transaction. Okay, so that's kind of not good enough, because the only person that pays for that is the customer. Okay, and the only person that pays, you know, at the point of claim when the TPA doesn't have access to risk level data and therefore is slower in handling the claim, that's the customer that pays for that. Now, one thing we are seeing in the MGA space, which is really positive and is one of the massive benefits of the delegated space, is that MGAs are the area in insurance that's able to pivot and to be able to provide better, more tailored service, better, more tailored products to customers, arguably, than the big composites, because they're more nimble. And you know, we're seeing a massive influx of digitally driven startup MGAs entering the market and doing things different. You know, a really great example of that over the past few years is probably Many Pets, that have really focused in on one product line that they've excelled at, and they've focused entirely on the customer. Everything they do is customer focused, which for them is pets, right? So they're very, very focused on that whole you know, animal piece and pet ownership piece. You know, what do pet owners need from us? You know, what are they experiencing when they go through a claim, and how do we make that journey easier for them? And that's one of the reasons that they've become a unicorn, right? Is because their focus is so heavily on customer. And that's really the power, I think, of the MGA space, is that there's just a bit more ability, I think, to do that, and particularly with the newer ones, which is really exciting, and is one of the reasons, I think, why the delegated space, the MGA space, is going to dictate the future of insurance, to be honest.
Well, taking on, and there's a lot of touch points towards the end customer as well. But if you look at the processes within the insurance industry, it's, at least from our perspective, it's very siloed, and that actually causes part of the challenge. So that even though there would be a very innovative claims director, for example, that looking into that, I have a lot of data that I could benefit, that the product designers or the overall holistic picture, who looks at what is the holistic view towards a customer, how would you start to kind of like reorganize in a way a bit of the process there? Because it is very, like, you have sales, you have marketing, you have underwriting, you have operations, then you have claims, and then so it's a lot of and everything. So what would be kind of your thoughts on that?
Such a good point. And gosh, let me tell you, it's times 10 worse in the delegated space because there are different physical entities doing the job, right? So inside an insurance carrier, we have historically and still today do see that silo mentality of underwriting, claims, sales, all of that kind of stuff, compliance, and we haven't necessarily been good enough at stitching those together. Some companies are very good at it and will sit their claims team with their underwriters and there will be overlap. But I think that even then there still is that silo mentality. And I have seen a lot of this of, as you rightly say, claims managers who are thinking very innovatively because they're really at the customer coalface, right? They're really at the point that matters. Yeah. And they are the ones that come face to face with angry customers, right? If things don't go wrong. So they're the ones that are most motivated, I think, to innovate in the claims world, has been my personal experience. But then they're often kneecapped because in order to innovate in claims and to do really fun, exciting stuff like, you know, claims triaging, auto settlement, zero human touch intervention, all of that good stuff, or leveraging pieces of kit that helps you to speed up the claims handling process. In order to do that, you need the risk level detail at the point of claim. And in-house in carriers, that's easier to do. But in the delegated world, that's really, really hard, or can be really hard to do, because you've got two different entities, one that has sold the insurance policy and one that is handling the claim. And very frequently, and I would say more often than not, the entity handling the claim, the TPA or the DCA, depending on whether you're in Lloyd's or not, they don't have access to the policy that's been sold. They don't know if a premium has been claimed, if they're even checking that. They don't know if the insured is covered. They just don't know. All they can go off is that the policy number matches the format of that cover holder, and that's all they've got. So they act. You know, that they are inherently slowed down because they have to get that confirmation from the cover holder that this entity is undercover. So yeah, it's even worse in the delegated space. And there are ways that we can fix this, right? It's just a simple matter of being able to put in place mechanisms to share that data back to the TPA, which we haven't necessarily cracked yet. Again, going back to that whole piece about the industry being underserved.
What do you see there as if looking at what technologies there you would look into that, or even you are utilizing in a way in that space to be able to transfer the data in a format that is still CDP compliant and so forth, but still kind of that you have all the relevant details, because this is when we know that AI, when it's coming as well, that okay, what part of the process you can even handle with AI and what is kind of critical, which only has to be a person driven, or that the person looks at data and so forth. But what comes to your mind there?
Yeah, so it's something that we're tackling with DAX actually in partnership with and again, this all comes back to the integration piece. We're a big believer in integrating on behalf of the industry. We are a great believer in collaboration between technologists. I think that we, as technologists, have a responsibility to the market to do better and to speak to each other more. And that's what we're endeavouring to do with DAX. So this is a really interesting piece for me. And one of the clients that I'm working with at the moment, we are really focused on that piece around how do we, because they've got a limited book of TPA, so they've got 8 core TPAs that they work with, and looking at, in that circumstance, how do we get those TPAs, that risk level data, from the cover holders via DAX? And that's what we do as an integrator. So we can push that data because we've got the contract details in system digitally first. There's no paper in the DAX world. Yeah. And that enables us, through appropriate and secure mechanisms, to share the relevant risk level data back to the TPA to then open up that world of speeding up claims settlement times, and eventually in the next year or so is on the roadmap for us, looking into how do we start triaging, auto settling some of those claims. And it's interesting because historically the way we've looked at this is just a really simple algo, and if this and then that algorithm of if it is this sort of claim, and it is, you know, following these dynamics, then we will settle it. What we can do with AI in the future, I think, on the claims side at least, is we can probably start to be a bit more intelligent in the way that we settle claims. So there are huge banks of data out there that we could you know, get a piece of AI to scrutinize that could then make a decision on a claim that historically a human would be required for that intervention. Some really obvious ones are property claims, where we get of certain categories where there's, I don't know, there's been a wind event, and you know, AI can look up what the wind, you know, what was the wind event? Was it in the area that the insured is claiming it was in? It can look at the photographs and make a decision based on those photographs. Another really obvious example, and this actually is already kind of happening, just not with AI, it's just with mass data, is in the liability space. So in the liability space, we can look at injuries, and because of the big data pool that we now have, we can even see down to a specific lawyer level what the average settlement was for that specific type of injury. So we can see all of the negotiated settlements for a specific type of industry, even literally down to a specific lawyer in a specific law firm, and understand what the likely outcome is going to be, which then cuts down on that settlement time for the customer. And again, if you gave a piece of AI all of that data, then they could, you know, that could be some really, really quick decision making without any human intervention at all.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds interesting. Well, as said, that the benefit of, I think benefit in a way, definitely for the end customer in the future is the speed of being able to get replies. I think this is one of the topics there, definitely. But if coming out from the process in a way, and I know that this hits especially now in UK when buyers need to understand products better and better, and in some formats, in a way, it's almost part of the process as well. That okay, is a claim being in the end of the day, is it being covered or not? It's not always even the policy, which kind of, because there is the room for interpretation. How you would balance this between, because there is that room of interpretation, what has happened and how it has been happened. And if you look at it from the process point of view, because this has obviously been it's the pain point for the insurance industry. They look at kind of like different variables that, okay, will this be covered or not? And it's not always so clear. How you would be able to explain this as well, that if I as a user buy a product, that they would understand that, okay, what happens when this happens if I end up into that claims process.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. Now, there's been a big piece of work happen in the UK between a company called Brown Jacobson, which is a big law firm in London that services the insurance industry, and Nottingham University. And they wrote a piece of, they did a piece of research on policy wordings. And what that transpired was, really, in order for the general public to be able to understand what they're buying, an insurance policy needs to be positioned in such a way that a 12-year-old could understand it, right? So that's the way it should be written. That's how clear it should be written, right? For the general public, the Joe public to understand it, that's where it needs to be positioned. And what we see too much of, and it is changing, but what we see too much of is very lengthy documents that don't necessarily make it clear, policy wordings that don't make it clear what is and is not covered. And we still do see too much of, oh, well, I thought this would be covered because you said here this, and then there's some random exclusion somewhere. And that gets worse and worse the more sophisticated the customer is, right? So for for comfort, and I truly believe that this should be the case for anybody that's buying insurance, even where they're advised by a broker. Because some policies that I've read, and bearing in mind that my background is a lawyer, I spent many years as a litigator, and some of the policies that I've read in the market, I've had to put my head under a towel, be in a dark room with no distractions in order to try and work my way through that policy and understand exactly what was not covered. And it was a difficult read, even as somebody who is intelligent and sophisticated and understands insurance. So yeah, I believe that should be the case, not just for consumers. It should be the case for everybody. For everybody. Yeah, we need to be clear in our language with those policies. And again, this all comes down to getting the basics right. Okay, I just think as an industry, we're not getting these basics right yet. And I know that we're going to come on to talk about innovation, but before we can innovate, crikey, we just need to get the simple stuff right. Okay, things like it being easy to buy a policy, that you understand what it covers, that it's because insurance is a grudge purchase. People don't really understand the benefit of it until they make a claim. And even when they do make a claim, generally speaking, the feeling is that you're going to get screwed over still, right? That's generally, I feel like that. And I work in the industry. I feel horror about the prospect of having to make an insurance claim. And I worked in claims, right? So yeah, I think that's a real problem. I think we just need to focus on the basics and get those right. And it's really simple.
Because if you look at it from and this we do know as well, it's kind of like you can write product description in exactly the same way for two different companies. Product description is exactly the same, but the terms and conditions are completely different.
Mm-hmm.
And it's still, and then obviously looking at further, then I think that definitely to be able to overcome the tipping point of that it's only the pricing in a way that matters.
Yeah.
I think that's a big thing there.
And I think so. Just a final point on this, because I'm conscious that we're probably running to the end. So again, customer focus. We talked about customer a lot here, and look at the product and the purpose. Okay, so I ride a bicycle, and I have been quite a serious cyclist up until injuring my knee in the past year or so, and have an expensive bike. Have more than one expensive bike actually, but let's not go there. But and I spent hours reading all of the different bike insurance policies that were available in the UK market to find one that suited what I needed it for, and to make sure that I was doing the right things, so that if my bike got stolen whilst I was out, or it was parked at work, I would be covered for that. Now that involved a huge amount, because I was reading the policies from start to finish, and that was only where I could download the policies before I bought it, by the way, right? Where I could actually find the policy to download it before I even purchased the policy.
Yeah, this is horrible. I think that's
really
hard. It's kind of like you don't see the product terms before you buy the product.
Yeah. And actually, what would have been really useful there is if somebody had put themselves in my shoes and gone, what is important to me as a cyclist? What's important is that I understand what sort of lock I should be using, or else it's not going to be covered. I understand where I can and cannot leave it, or else it's not going to be covered. I understand that, what am I covered for? So am I covered if a car knocks me off? Am I covered if I fall off? Am I covered if it's my fault and I've not been paying attention and I run into a traffic cone? Because sometimes there are odd random exclusions in policies. Is my kit covered? How much is it covered for? Do I have to have bought it? Are you going to replace it like for like? With the bike, are they going to replace it like for like, or is it going to be a degraded value on that, depending on how long I've had it? All of these things for me as a cyclist were the stuff that were important, and that's what I was looking for in the policy. Particularly around when you're out on long rides and you don't want to carry a big gold standard lock. And this is one of the things, right? If you understand cycling, you understand that I can't be carrying that amount of a gold standard lock amount of weight on my bike on a 100-mile ride, for instance, right? So where do we, and I'm going to have to go into shops and into cafes to get refreshments and stuff. So yeah, that's the kind of, example, I guess, and I know it's a super simple example, but I think if the insurance company had put themselves properly in the customer's shoes, that would have been how they positioned it on their website. It would have been, here is what you are and are not covered for under the terms of this policy. Here is the policy document itself if you want to read it. Super simple, you know, exactly. and easy to understand.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it's I actually consider that we need to start from the simple examples, because basically the more complex it goes, the more better structures you need to have as well to align them towards the rest of the products as well. The topic what we always ask, and is what is interesting, how innovative you consider insurance companies. What, from 1 to 10? What would you say?
I'm going to maybe give them a 1.
A 1.
and I don't mean that in a critical sense. Actually, I genuinely don't mean it in a critical sense. I think a lot of pressure is put on insurance companies to be innovative, and it's the buzzword, right? Innovate, innovate, innovate. And I actually don't think that's what insurance industries need to be doing. Insurance companies need to be doing. Sorry, I just think they need to be spending more time on focusing on getting the basics right before they can innovate. Now, I don't consider introducing new technology and innovation. I see that as being getting the basics right. I don't necessarily consider much of the tech in our space to be innovative, particularly. I see it as either automating today's processes or slightly tweaking today's processes or augmenting today's processes. I wouldn't say that any of it is particularly challenging necessarily, and I'm happy to be proven wrong on that, but I don't think it necessarily is. There's some stuff happening in kind of the trading space, I guess. So, sort of capacity matching, algorithmic follow, algorithmic underwriting, all of that good stuff that I think is a bit more innovative, but it's quite niche. It's not mainstream by any stretch of the imagination. So yeah, I'd say relatively low. I think I do genuinely.
What is there from our aspect as well is kind of like it's insurance is not the one creating the product which needs the risk component. Basically, the industry is not doing or actually creating those products in that format. I think only in the financial aspects in some form, then you obviously insurance industry kind of does create the products. But if you look at anything physical or anything humane or people, that's not the driver, is never insurance. So no, I definitely agree. What would you say if looking at it, as said there, that the process generally towards the insurance industry, and you said already that it's kind of the basics what needs to be there in place. But if now some of the listeners would say that, okay, where would Clare start if I would be an insurance company? Where I would start to look into the process side? What I would fix?
Two places. I would start with that point of purchase and point of claim. Customer. Start the customer. Point of purchase, point of claim. And making both of those journeys as simple and easy and obvious and clear and glorious from a user experience as possible.
Okay. Okay. Well, but looking at and I know that really is, and I think, do you agree as well? Because what really, if you look at it from the end user perspective, the insurance policies what they have is scattered between the kind of like well, let's take an example. For example, you get divorced. In a way, there's a number of different policies that handle it, instead of that you kind of have one area that actually would cover it. And this is how the customer life works, but not the insurance company's view.
It's so true, and I'm so, oh God, how many insurance policies do I have? I don't know. I'm a sophisticated buyer, right? And as a human being who works in the insurance industry, I don't know how many policies I've got, and I don't know what they all cover, truth be told. I've got kind of like, you know, I've got life, I've got critical illness, I've got one that covers my mortgage if I die. Don't know what that one's called. I've got, you know, I've got house, I've got contact, I've got car, I've got bike, I've got health, maybe, and I've got a, you know, a holiday home. So one of those insurance policies, like, and then I've got my businesses, right? So I've got 2 businesses. I've got a consultancy, so I've got PI for the consultancy. I've got but then I've got health insurance under DAX, which also conflicts with the health insurance I've got for my consultancy. And I'm just like, I've lost track. And then, you know, for DAX, I've got about 8 different policies. Well, actually, I've got one. That is a really good one, actually. I've had a really amazing purchasing experience for the insurance for DAX. That is one area, actually, and that's a modern tech-driven MGA that I've bought that insurance through. And that was a delightful purchasing experience.
Very cool. I think then let's aim towards the delightful process. I think that would be kind of like what I would, as a someone purchasing an insurance product, I would be a delightful process when something
That's
happens.
What we want. That's what we want. That's what that should be every insurance company's mission statement. It just should be, right? That should be the starting point.
I think that's a good way to end our discussions today. Thank you, Claire. Thank you for the insights. It was lovely to have a talk on the topic, and kind of like I said from our part, it's always interesting to hear more insights, more details from going to the core of insurance industry. So thank you, Claire.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, and
a good day.
And thank you for all the listeners now, and then for the recording listeners as well. Thank you.
Have a good day.
Bye bye.